Terrific. I'm gonna, for everybody's here, if you could just go ahead and take the next minute or so to sign in. So we have a record of you being here. I just posted it at 6:33, sign-in sheet. And while you're, see, what do we have? 29 members. I'll post it again in about 5 or 6 minutes. Well, welcome to the March 14th Hudson River Park Advisory Council meeting. We have a full agenda today, and just want to ask everybody to fill out the attendance form. In the agenda that I sent earlier, we had the February 13th minutes, which I can also copy and paste. And it's also in this document that I'm going to copy and put back into the chat so you can take a look at the minutes. I don't know, everybody in the advisory council members should have seen the minutes already. So I'm going to put it for everybody else right here, along with links to a resolution that was passed. I just put it in the chat again. And I would like to see if there's a motion to approve Tammy's minutes from February 13th, 2023. I
Can I motion myself?
Yes, a second, Erica. Okay. The February 2023 Hudson River Park Advisory Council minutes have passed. So everybody take a minute just to, everybody sees where the attendance form is. Go ahead and fill that out. You might want to double click the agenda. That'll, there's a slight change. Patrick Foster, who is representing the DEC today and is also often chair of the Hudson River Park Trust at meetings that I've been to anyway, will be joining us a little later. He had a previous commitment, so he's going to join us about a half an hour later than we thought he was going to be able to. So I also wanted to mention that, you know, we passed the resiliency letter that we handed off to the governor, just asking for a task force of knowledgeable folks in our area to actually participate in the resiliency plans that are going to be shaping over the next decade or so. And I believe, and Tammy can kind of pick this up, that CB 1, 2, and 4 adopted a similar language. So thank you, Tom Fox, for writing that. And Tom, are you here today? I don't see you, but.
Okay. Can I add to that?
Sure, yes, Tammy, please do add to that.
So CB1, definitely, it is in our comments to the Army Corps of Engineers and included and referenced and shared through that. But I will say it is also the impetus for us pushing with Congressman Dan Goldman's office, who is now going to do a town hall on Thursday, and I encourage everyone to go. This is what I estimate our best opportunity to get a task force going, because when we showed him the letter and spoke with them about that, they were very encouraged to try and take a cloud view and really get something robust on the west side that suits not only our current setup, which the Army Corps of Engineers, you know, clearly missed many of the things that are going on, but also look at the future plans of what we're looking to get to. So I'm really hopeful that everybody and anybody shows up virtually or in person. I'd be delighted to see everybody and have a cup of coffee tomorrow. I mean, Thursday. But yeah, it could be fantastic.
Tammy, can you post the information in the chat so everybody has an opportunity to take a look at it?
I will indeed.
Terrific. And once again, for those who are joining late, please, if you have an agenda, there's an attendance form, please do sign in. Actually, I haven't signed in yet.
Tammy, this might be a dumb question, and I haven't looked at the CB2 calendar, but is it on the CB2 calendar as well?
This actually is Dan Goldman called this town hall. So I don't think it's on the CBs. He decided this last week, and we were notified. We put it out in our newsletter this weekend. So I think he's spoken with everybody, but yeah, it should be CB 1, 2,
and
4. Yeah. And who's just above 4 on the west side? Yeah, I mean, I would say any community board that goes all the way up to 59th Street and above should really be. This will be because we don't have anything planned for the west side, let's be honest.
Thank you, Tammy. And now we're going to move to the first agenda item. We've invited Peter Ebright of Circle Line to refresh us on the great things that they're doing. I don't know why we let Peter share his screen if possible. Is that activated, Robert, so that I can see that you're looking at it now? If you can't, I can probably find it and I can probably share my screen if mine is activated.
Here, let's see.
I think we should be all set.
Okay, terrific. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for a moment and then we can go to your slides. That'd be terrific.
Okay, sure. Here, let's see. I'm just sharing my screen here and tell me, is this sharing? Let's see. Oh, wait, here we go. Hold on. Let's see. Is that sharing?
Yes, we are. We see beautiful images from the 50s, I guess.
Fantastic. Okay. So here, we'll start with this. So my name is Peter Ebright. I'm general counsel and vice president at New York Cruise Lines, which is the parent company of Circle Line. And first of all, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for having me tonight. It's nice to meet all of you. And I have to say that we are really excited to be a tenant who is an active tenant in the park. We want to be excellent civic citizens, and we take great pride in being part of the Hudson River Park community. So I just want to lead through a little bit of the New York Cruise Line's history, the history of Circle Line, just to get a sense of our sort of place in the area. New York Cruise Lines is the leading marine-based tourism, transportation, dining, and entertainment destination. Our most recognizable brand is Circle Line, which has been in business since 1945. In 1955, we moved our operations from Battery Park up to Pier 83, and we're privileged to welcome about 1 million passengers from over 150 countries each year on our vessels. Most of them are tourists experiencing New York City for the first time from our favorite vantage point, the Hudson River. And you can see some of the images of our location over the years. The one on the left, obviously, is much earlier. You can see that that's Pier 83, and then the one on the right is not super recent, but more recent than that, showing something that more closely resembles the current configuration. On the next slide, it shows Piers 81 and 83 through the years from 1950, which is very soon after we established operations up here, to the 1970s, when the configuration more closely resembled what we have today. And also, it's worth noting that our most recent lease ceded upland space, which resulted in the promenade becoming more park-like. You can see, of course, in these images that the upland area was parking, which really didn't serve the benefit of the community at large. So now, being part of the park, we're happy that our area is a more kind of productive part of the parkland community. The next slide. Let's see. So our current lease commenced on January 1st, 2009, and is set to end on December 31st, 2038. In 2022, we paid about $1 million to the Hudson River Park Trust in rent and fees. That says over, but it's roughly that. And our rent is comprised of our base rent in addition to percentage rate rent based on our gross revenue, which thereby aligns our interest in maintaining a successful business. And if my screen sharing isn't working correctly, please don't hesitate to let me know. As far as our operations at Piers 81 and 83, in December of 1965, we renovated Pier 83 with the help of the city of New York, embarking on a $3 million rehabilitation program that resulted in the 2-deck concrete structure with parking that we have now, which also includes our corporate offices and our loading berths for Circle Line. In 2007, we began an ambitious strip building campaign, which eventually replaced our entire Circle Line fleet with some of the best new sightseeing vessels in the world. The first was the Circle Line Manhattan, completed in 2008, followed by the Circle Line Brooklyn in 2009, the Circle Line Queens in 2009, then the Circle Line Bronx in 2016, Staten Island in 2017, and the Circle Line Liberty in 2017. And the Circle Line vessels operate out of Pier 83. And they're in two classes of vessel, the Manhattan class and the Bronx class. The Manhattan class is lower, mainly so that it can fit underneath all of the bridges going around Manhattan so that it can circumnavigate the island. So just to describe our operations at Piers 81 and 83, the vessels operating from Pier 81 include the World Yacht Duchess, which primarily does charters, the World Yacht Princess that operates as La Barca Cantina, which is a mezcal and taco restaurant. It's a fantastic Mexican floating restaurant. We also operate the World Yacht Destiny. And actually, just to go through the years that these boats went into service, the Duchess, 1986, the Princess, 1986, the World Yacht Destiny in 1997, that operates as the North River Lobster Company, which is a floating lobster shack. There's also the St. Charles, which contains our administrative offices in addition to operations and our kitchen. Also the Beast, which went into service in 2011, which is a sightseeing speedboat operating from the floating dock between Piers 81 and 83. That area I'll show on the later slide that shows the layout of the whole area. So for the layout, you can see on the south, of course, is Pier 81. That includes La Barca Cantina, the North River Lobster Company, the St. Charles Barge with the administrative offices, the operations, and the kitchen, and then the Duchess, which it says not currently in use. Actually, that vessel is used for charters. So rather than not currently in use, it actually is in sort of less regularly scheduled use. It's in use when we have charters for that vessel. The floating dock in between, which you see that little area sticking out closer to Pier 83, that's where the sightseeing speedboat, the Beast operates from. And then up at Pier 83, there are the 6 Circle Line vessels. There are our administrative offices, there's our parking deck, and our engineering shop. As far as our schedule of operations, so our sightseeing cruises from Pier 83 operate year-round. The first regular sightseeing cruise of the day departs at 10 a.m. The last sightseeing cruise returns at 9 p.m. Then we also have our dining cruises from Pier 81, La Barca Cantina, and North River Lobster Company. They operate from roughly mid-April through December 31st. The first regular dining cruise departs as early as 12:30 p.m. The last regular dining cruise returns at 10 p.m. And charters, of course, may operate at different times depending on the needs of that charterer. Some areas of concern, which rather than naming them areas of concern, they're really just areas that that we think are of sort of mutual interest, are the different uses that all converge in our location: the pedestrian traffic, the bike traffic, the bus traffic, the bus parking, the bus charging, and runners. These are all important uses of the park that we all want to encourage, but need to make sure that they're all compatible. And so, with the upcoming redesign, this appears to be an opportunity for everybody to be able to take another look at these areas and come up with a design where everything can coexist harmoniously. And that's about it.
Thank you, Peter. I just have a question. What is charging? Bus traffic parking charging? What is charging?
So I'm sure the MTA would have more information about that, but there's some infrastructure there that hovers above the buses that use battery power, and my understanding is that the buses charge there. There was recently some construction in that area as well, but it appears to us that there's bus charging going on. The MTA might have more information about that.
Appreciate it. We do have some questions, Peter, and if anyone here has a question, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in order.
Great. Should I turn off my screen share?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Just trying to figure out how to turn that off here. I don't see the button to do
Robert,
that. But anyway.
Robert probably can take it away from you too.
Sure.
But in the
there we
meantime, while we work,
there we go.
So let's see, Mary, you have a question.
maybe I've missed something, but what is the redesign that's being referred to?
Right.
So I think actually Nori mentioned this last month. We're looking at the redesign of 29th Street to 44th Street of the Esplanade, where it's one of the unfinished portions of the park. We're actually really excited that we're able to sort of advance it. We expect to have an RFP for a design team out next couple of weeks. It was in last month's report and again this month's report, which I know was short notice. It's going to be a great time. There'll be a lot of community engagement once we have a design team on there to start talking about what that area of the park should look like.
Susanna?
Thank you. I was just curious to know the lease with the trust, who's responsible for the bulkhead maintenance and the shore maintenance? Is that the Circle Line, whatever, City Cruises?
As far as the delineation of responsibilities, I'd have to check on that. I can certainly get back to you.
Thank you.
Tom?
Yes, I was wondering if, Robert, if the advisory council would get an opportunity to weigh in on the design. I know you go to the community boards, but it would be great if we had an opportunity to get a full briefing and make our comments to you.
Definitely. So I think with, as we've done with, I think, a lot of our other public peers, we have a pretty wide public engagement period. It's advisory council, it's community boards, it's members of the other members of the public, and as well as a number of stakeholders. So in this area in particular, there's a lot of complicated uses, and we will have to incorporate a lot of folks who have differing needs to try to come up with the best piece, we are just in the beginning of bringing a design team who will help us do that sort of engagement and planning.
So we will get a specific briefing on this and a chance to weigh in for the advisory council, not just part of everybody else.
I mean, we don't have the process. It may be, you may have to join with other members of the public, not with the advisory council independently, but.
Excuse me for being a pain in the neck. Our charge is to advise the board of directors, your board of directors. It would be wonderful if we didn't have to stand online with 40 other people to have a 2-minute comment and could actually have a meaningful, thoughtful discussion regarding this particular project.
We will definitely have meaningful, thoughtful comments and exchanges, engagement on the project.
Okay. Thank you.
So Robert, if you don't mind, if you're bringing it upon CB4, if you could also bring it to my attention and maybe we could dedicate some time during the
definitely
agenda. That would be terrific. Thank you. Richard.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the presentation. Could you just take a minute and elaborate a little bit on what you were describing so gently as these conflicts, so we can have an understanding of what the issues are from your perspective?
Sure. I don't want to dominate your time, Peter. Do you want to go?
You go ahead and I'll fill anything in.
Sure. So, I mean, when we're talking about conflicts, particularly in this area between West 29th Street and 44th Street, which covers the area of Peter's piece, there is the ferry terminal. There is the privately owned Pier 78. There is the Circle Line. There is the MTA bus site, the turnaround and charging locations for electric buses. And so it's a complicated series of piers and upland areas that we will have to work with and try to figure out how to make sure we can have the best park as possible.
Well, let's not forget the heliport.
And the heliport. And Pier 76, which itself will not have been designed and figured out yet either. So it's going to be, a
fun
piece. I miss Gateway also, which itself is a design challenge because we can't put certain things in certain places.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, really, it's an area that accommodates a lot of use, and I think it's just in all of our interests to make sure that that the design allows those uses to coexist harmoniously, and we are just one part of that whole puzzle.
Tammy.
So, Peter, I'd like to hear the long-term vision for hybridization of the boats and what boats at what piers could possibly be turned into hybrid to lower the emissions, obviously, and environmental impacts. That's one. And two, can you speak, or I didn't see anything, don't you operate the small pier down south around Pier 25 that is for travelers? Aren't you?
So the location that we operate from downtown is, we have the license with the Parks Department to operate from Gangway 6 in Battery Park, which of course is not in Hudson River Park. We have operated from other locations in the park in the past, but we don't operate from other locations along the Hudson in between. As far as hybridization and electric power, I'm glad you asked. One of our other corporate subsidiaries is New York Water Taxi, and back in November, New York Water Taxi announced that we are engaging in an effort to bring the first fully electric ferry boat to New York Harbor, operating under New York Water Taxi. It would be a much smaller boat, not one of the Circle Line boats, but we are very actively engaged in efforts to look at our fleet and see which technology would be most appropriate as we go forward. I think every company that uses an internal combustion engine is sort of having an existential issue right now of how do we go forward in this world with this need for power, and what is the best technology to adopt, because it's a huge investment. You can't pick the wrong technology and then find out there's not the infrastructure to support it. While we want to be a company that is leading some of these efforts, the fact is we need the infrastructure to also be there. And so there are a lot of moving parts to this, but it's something that we are extremely actively looking into to find out what our best path forward is as a responsible company.
Have you sought any private public partnerships or grants to be able to do that? I'm sure the infrastructure needs to come on the pier side from the trust. But again, the trust is going to have the same problems that everyone else does, and that's funding. So what kind of opportunities and help can you partner with the trust and other organizations to get that done? Because you're right, even if you had electric boats, if you can't get them to the pier because there's no, refueling, then that doesn't help. But if that's the only answer, then we're never going to move forward. So we need to rely on companies like yours to work with the trust and friends of the trust to secure private, public dollars and grants and other things to get this done.
Right, agreed. And we're eager to explore every opportunity. In terms of getting a grant, I think that would need to be to pursue a particular technology. And right now, it is extremely unclear which technology is the best path forward. So, and some of that might take a little bit of time to figure out, not for any lack of effort on anybody's part, but to see, to work with the city, to work with Con Ed, to see how this all shakes out and what the best path forward is. But once we figure out what it is, we want to. We're very eager to adopt the new technology.
Do you have environmental goals that will give you guide rails of a timeline that you could let us know on that?
I can look into that. Yeah, I can certainly get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hector.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for your time on this. I've, like a lot of our folks, have taken the Circle Line out of the Day Line as well for quite a while now. When you mentioned you want to be involved with the conversation on the redesign of the roadways there in the area, what do you envision actually? What are you trying to propose here?
Yeah, and really, I think that first of all, we want to be respectful of the fact that this is an area with a lot of stakeholders. And we are but one stakeholder here. We're a stakeholder who's been here for a very long time, and we have significant operations here. But again, we are but one stakeholder in this puzzle. Really, I think that our interest is the same as everybody else's here. And excuse me for repeating myself, but we just want to be part of an area that operates harmoniously. For instance, my office looks out on the intersection of like around 43rd Street and the West Side Highway. And my heart skips a beat every time I see a bus make that turn across the pathway there. And that's just but one example of many different uses there that can hopefully be made to coexist better. In terms of specific goals, there isn't anything, I don't want to be presumptuous to say that, this is what needs to be done. Really, all that we are looking to do is be one of many members of this conversation.
Thanks. We're going to wrap this up kind of soon, guys. I know this is your second question for Susanna, Tom, just because we're going to run late, but I did have one question for you. And that is, we have a lot of human powered boaters here. And we're obviously, you didn't have that as one of your safety bullet points. And I was wondering, what is the directive? What kind of advice or how do the human powered boaters interact best with your powered boats?
Yeah, and I think that we've done a good job over time of being respectful of the human powered boaters. We realize that we're part of a community. For instance, there are Coast Guard rules in terms of how loud our horns need to be, how much we need to blast our horns. In fact, it's interesting that you asked that because we get complaints on the other end about people saying that our horns, that they don't like hearing our horns. The fact is, safety is a paramount issue for us. We want to make sure that we respect the human powered boaters, and the blasting of the horns is a significant part of that. Also, we're always willing to talk to anybody if there are any issues with our operations and the interaction with human powered boaters. We are very happy to have that conversation.
Thanks. So let's keep the questions brief because it's already 7 o'clock. But Susanna, and then
yeah, I just wanted to know, and you might not have an answer to this question either, but it raised question when Tammy was asking about infrastructure. How much infrastructure does the trust provide, and how much do you guys do on your own? I mean, water, electricity, waste, all that kind of stuff. Is that stuff that you guys get for yourselves, or does the trust part of your lease call for supplying any of that?
I'd have to go back and look. I'm not as familiar with
All right.
those, but I believe that most of it is from us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Tom, last question.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that Circle Line is the legacy maritime operator on the West Side. They were there when nobody else was there. It was Circle Line and the Intrepid. And they really kept the flame alive in the 70s and 80s. And, I think that they're an important part of our maritime legacy here on the West Side. And I would support their involvement in these types of things. Very much so.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for your participation. I'm sure we'll probably be seeing you again as the plans develop to improve safety. And we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which I've been asked by Patrick Foster to delay until he is able to finish his other commitment. So he'll be joining us a little later. So we're going to move on to Safety Committee report. We're going to be speaking, if you could, first about graffiti and then the water safety and the resolution. This may be something. Okay,
thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter. I have a quick question.
Bye.
Is the attendance list in the chat? I haven't seen it.
It is, and it's also on the it's
Okay.
up there somewhere. It says please sign in at 6:43. Tom, I don't know if you were there.
No, I wasn't here. I was getting dinner.
Oh, 6:43. Okay, I'll send it. I'll put it in one more
Thank
time.
you.
Anyone who hasn't signed in, please take a look. It's a link that I just posted. It's
Thank you.
Yep. Mary, you are the chair of the Safety Committee. If you wouldn't mind talking about graffiti as our first topic for Michael, who's would like to participate and may have to leave early, and then water safety and your resolution.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's very short as far as graffiti is concerned at this point, the safety committee had a preliminary discussion. We wanted to compose some questions for the trust staff, but it was inspired by a report that Michael shared with us, which I will definitely share with our staff liaisons, and I can share with the whole advisory council as well. Our safety committee was very inspired by it. It had a lot of best practices for how to prevent graffiti in the first place. So I think that's really all I have to say right now, because we have not forwarded the report or the questions to anyone yet, but we just met on Thursday. Although that was going to be our focus and we wanted to be able to just think about those questions and absorb what we learned from the report, we also talked about a water safety issue that Rob Buchanan had brought to the advisory council, and it didn't make it onto the agenda last week. So I offered, since it in part dealt with safety, to have the safety committee look at that. And we did develop a resolution, which I'll put in the chat. Give me a second here. And essentially it is, and I've sent this to Robert only yesterday, since, like I said, we met on Thursday. But it essentially just asks for a stakeholder process to be launched to discuss landing specifically for human-powered boats at Gansevoort Peninsula, and to, as part of the stakeholder discussion, look at if there's a way to have a standardized policy throughout the park for all the landings and boathouses where human-powered boats might come in. So that's the main thing right now for the advisory council to think about and vote on. So I've put the resolution in the chat, and I'll just give you a minute to read it. And also I can answer questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Why don't we open the floor to some questions before we actually vote on the resolution?
Sure.
Also, do you have it? Do you also have it in? I can't seem to copy it, so I can save it later. You may need to email it to me afterwards.
Yeah, I had emailed it to you already, but I can do that again.
Yeah, I looked for it. I don't, I don't.
I've
think
had a little problems. I think I'm using your other email now, but I did have some problems with things not going through to Gmail accounts. So
Can you send it to me as well, Mary, for the minutes, please?
Yep.
All right, thanks. So let's go ahead and open the floor to some questions. I see Tammy's hand is raised. So Tammy.
So one of my questions is, when we're talking about human power, that does not, I mean, there are jet skis in the Hudson. Do we anticipate or have a ruling on whether a jet ski pulls up in that area? I hate to say it, it's not only human powered, but it's human individuals. Have we thought about that at all?
I'll just,
They're motorized vessels.
yes, I'll just say we did not discuss that, I think, because the issue came in the context of kayaks, and the landing at Gansevoort is only intended for that. I think it's possible that the policy discussion should address that.
Will there be signage in the water anywhere that says
Good idea.
anything?
Part of what this is asking for is signage that explains the policy once it's developed and clarified. But specifically putting in the water is a very good idea, since people are coming from that way.
Well, that was
Skis are prohibited by park rules throughout the entire park.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Robert, so is speeding on the West Side Highway. But I mean, it's
Enforcement is always a question.
correct, and it's got that really nice outcrop, and it's looking beautiful, by the way. But since it has that pole structure of, reminiscent of an old, whatever it is, I thought maybe that would be, unfortunately, a good place for a sign to be put, So it didn't have to be put necessarily in the water, but a sign there that delineated that kind of a restriction.
And I also wanted to add that we've kept the resolution fairly generic because we thought a lot of details would be developed during that stakeholder discussion. The resolution really just asks for that stakeholder process to happen.
Okay. Martin, you had your hand up. Did you put it back down?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, kind of back Tammy, some sort of signage or something that occurred to me, even a buoy that had no motorized vessels. Because, I'm sure it's going to be a human powered only zone, but so is Pier 26. And, every once in a while we'll get buzzed by jet skiers and we kind of have to chase them out. So.
Yeah, Graham, I just posted a note. I wonder, Graham, if you could just talk to us about the issues, if you could elaborate on that, if you don't mind speaking for a moment.
Mute. Hi guys, just to follow up on what Martin said, that if you want to bring a motorboat into the park, it costs quite a bit of money. What is the docking at Pier 25? It's $30 or $50 or something like that. So these guys tend to be cheap, and yes, they come to Pier 26. So one reason is it's free. We do kick them out, as Martin alluded to when we're there. Ganfort is going to be unsupervised, and it's going to be the only free location. So the solution, of course, is to have a free location somewhere else in the park for motorboats instead of charging so much money. But that's another story.
Oh. All right. Thanks, Graham. Tam, you still have your hand up. Is that from before? Okay, thank you. So I think I understand the resolution. It's pretty broad, and it's just asking for us to take notice of it and then create a task force to come up with these ideas. In principle, does anyone have any objection to adopting this resolution? All right.
So I'm not going to comment on the resolution directly. I will say, the Hudson River Park Trust does engage in a lot of stakeholder engagement. We talk to a lot of our voting groups. We talk to everyone here. We certainly have had these conversations any number of times. I think that there perhaps some confusion between what is sort of a safety or water use issue and what is a sort of landlord-tenant issue with trust and some of our permittees, boathouse operators, or others. And I think those are frankly separate questions. And I will also just kind of say, I think we had asked to attend this safety committee meeting as part of our engagement with stakeholders, and we're actually asked not to, so we were not able to engage either on the graffiti one conversation, which we are happy to have, and I know Rob and Chris and others would have gladly participated, and also this discussion as well. So we actually, were kind of turned away, and I think it was very confusing for us for the sort of request for stakeholder engagement while asking us not to attend. That being said, there are a lot of these things particularly when it comes to Gansevoort, there are a lot that goes into this. We are working with our city and state partners on this. We are talking to other folks who operate kayak launches, and we're happy to have some more conversations when we have a little bit more of a base on on some of those pieces of it. There are a lot of questions. There's design intent, there's what PEP can and cannot do. There's this Gansevoort in particular is a pretty unique site in it. And I don't want it to be sort of conflated with everything else. That being said, we are always happy to do stakeholder engagement. We do it regularly.
Thank you, Robert, and look forward to furthering those conversations. It seems as though it's kind of a blank sheet right now, and we obviously need the trust and their guidance. Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention you shouldn't take offense, Robert. We're a 50-member group, and our charge is to advise the board of directors of your organization. We love being informed by the staff, but that shouldn't preclude us from meeting and gathering our own counsel prior to interacting with you. It's not meant to be offensive. It's not meant to be secretive. It's just meant to be able to share opinions openly, without concern. And all we're asking for is a process. So I appreciate that you feel a little left out, but every once in a while, perhaps you respect. You don't invite us to all your meetings.
All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna move the topic on.
Okay.
I think we're, Mary, you go ahead and send me the copy. I don't think there's offensive. It's kind of broad strokes. I think it's fine. It opens up.
And it did bounce from your Gmail, so I've sent it from my personal account, but I just resent it.
Thank you,
Along
Mary.
with, I was asked to write one about the Apollonia, which is separate from the safety committee. So when you're ready, I'll also put that in the chat, but I've sent it by email as well.
Yeah, why don't we, have we discussed any, graffiti yet? We want to get in a little bit more depth in the graffiti conversation.
Well, I actually felt like we should have engaged the staff first. And, our idea was, it had come up at our safety committee meeting in November and hadn't really gone anywhere. So we wanted to just have a preliminary discussion and develop our questions and study the topic a little bit before we engage the staff. And that was really our intent.
Yes, Mary, I want to say, I'm sorry I'm not on camera. I want to endorse that. That's one of the things for which I am most grateful for the way Mary operates. So looking at graffiti, I provided some resources for us to engage in a dialogue and to educate ourselves about it so that we can be useful advisors. And also, I'm really interested, last time we were on, I had asked Dan and we brought the Highline network to come in. One of the things I'm really interested in is our group learning. I think that, a lot of us have the same issues, and it would be great if we're engaged in the learning society. So I was surprised by some of the things I read in the graffiti thing. For instance, one of the solutions that fell right off my tongue immediately when the topic came up at a meeting was to provide an art program. And I think, I always think that art is the answer. However, research shows that it's not the full answer for a graffiti remediation program. So it's really complicated. And I think it actually is a conversation that's going to provide ways for us to work together and support the trust in cool ways. And I endorsed Mary's process. I think we take a little pause and we'll come back. I hope I represented that right. I don't want to explain for you, Mary. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. And I also think that, Rob had come to the advisory council, Rob Buchanan, because he'd felt like he had not so far been successful in getting a commitment to the stakeholder discussion. And he had brought it to Dan and a couple of people he felt because of their in-water activities would be interested. And so I just grabbed it since we were about to have a meeting and said, can we help this along? So he really had written it already. We talked about it and I rephrased it a little bit, but that is an initiative that Rob Buchanan felt was important. And so we just wanted to add the safety committee support to it. He was very convincing. And it did connect with safety from obviously anyone in the water is at some level of risk, but also, as he said, the more places that people can get in and out of the water, the more safe it becomes because they can get out when they have a problem. So I just wanted to add that, and hopefully we can move that resolution.
Yeah, I think if we had been able to participate and engage in this conversation, folks would have learned that that was actually a direct conversation that I've had with Rob before, and I know we have talked about a number of these pieces before, particularly when it comes to Downtown Boathouse, and the concern that folks don't want to have to collect waivers for it, and that we do not see that this is a sort of back end way to get into a conversation for Downtown Boathouse to avoid having to collect waivers for when people use it as a public boat launch. We could have had that conversation directly as well, but we are always happy for your advice.
Okay, I think the waivers is getting into the weeds a little bit. But I
we
think
do
that
have
would be part of the policy development and discussion.
Right, for timing, it is a question, because I always lose track of time. Rob asked, when does the trust foresee Gonsford Launch Landing opening for use? Do you know the answer? Is there a broad stroke answer to that?
I believe we anticipated opening it with the peninsula as a whole.
And which is what date? How much time do we have?
Sometime this early fall. It's the best I
Early
can,
fall.
but very weather dependent. You know, I always like to press our construction people for hard timelines, and they like to give me seasons.
So it's very much right upon us. So these are things we probably should continue to discuss, and we should bring in the trust and make sure that our safety issues are addressed, and we listen to the trust experts and figure out how we can keep those jet skis off the Gosport landing, which makes a lot of sense.
If I could just add a word, you know, there's also another piece in this puzzle is the grant that the Friends group received in order to create signage. And I really think that the signage needs to be discussed with all parties before it's produced. And I appreciate, Robert, that I'm glad you're speaking to other agencies about their policies and how they handle water access in their parks. But, you know, at the end of the day, there has to be some time, some reasonable amount of time for the groups that are in the park to toss this back and forth with the trust. And it'd be really unfortunate if you presented a finalized policy with finalized signage and put it up the week before the thing opens. I think that's really the wrong approach. And so now is really the time to formally start some kind of discussion.
So I think as we talked about when you and I talked about that, particularly for, say, the DEC grant, we will be engaging with our voting groups and stakeholders on the signage pieces of it. I had said that directly to you before, and I think we have said it at a previous advisory council also. On the other pieces, yes, like we will be engaging with our stakeholder groups on the voting safety pieces. But as I said, we need to get a little bit of our own ducks in a row on some of these pieces first. It is a unique site for us, and is and particularly on this side of the Hudson. So there is a lot for us to consider in looking around it, again, beyond simply the perspective of non-motorized boaters.
Great. I'm gonna, Suzanne, once again, we're running.
Sorry, I just wanted to correct something. I think, Rob, did you say that the Friends had created the signage for the park? The Friends did not. That was a process.
The Friends received the grant to do it. They haven't done it yet, but Robert said that would begin at the first of the year, that process of developing the language. And so
we've had some delays. We've had some folks who are out on medical leave who are helping spearhead some of that project. So when we spoke, I think it was back in early February, I said that we were going to try to aim for this, or late January. It was not the first of the year. It was after that when we spoke. We will follow up with that. And I think we have written in this, and I think I have maybe included this in a previous AC report. I've said it, that we were looking for sometime in March, and we are a little behind on that, but are intending to start soon. But yeah, we've had some folks out on medical leave who are leading it.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Mary, and Mary, I'm pasting the resolution for the Apollonia in the chat. You want to just.
Oh, okay, you're doing that?
Have we acted on the previous resolution?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. I thought
The previous resolution for the kayak for Gansevoort.
Previous
Yes,
resolution that's
policy,
right
the policy.
there. Yeah, asking for. We read it. Nobody had any objections, but nobody ever said, do we?
I propose we vote on, I'd like to move that we vote on that.
Okay, so all in favor of adopting the resolution regarding Gansevoort Peninsula and the landing dock and furthering the conversation. So I did it the opposite way. I didn't think anyone was going to be objective. So I figured it passed, but rather than all in favor, are there any objections to the resolution as written by Mary and her safety committee? It's posted and starts with the word understanding that there will be. Is there any objections? Robert did mention that, he didn't participate. That can be noted, but I think it's just a matter of keeping the conversation going. So seeing that there's no objections, I am going, there is an objection. Katie, do you want to speak? Are you going to object? I can't hear you, but Yeah, I can't hear you. Sorry, Katie. You might have put it in the chat. Yeah, I don't see that you even have a mic. I don't see you muted. But I will go ahead, Katie, and mark you as, well, you can always email me. You have my email address, so you could, I'll tell you what, why don't we table this for a second? We'll come back in a moment, and then Katie, you can always put it in the chat, and then we'll move on to the Apollonia. And I'm gonna go ahead and post that now. We'll come back.
I just did because I had it ready to go
Oh.
down.
Okay.
Stereo.
Yes.
Are we mentioning, oh, so Katie, are we mentioning that the signage should be in the water? I don't think we're getting into details yet, Katie. I think it's just a matter of we're keeping it open to conversation. And
Yeah, the whole intent is that the people most involved in operating such programs and having a relationship with people who might land boats would develop the details.
so given that, Katie, I don't see you right now. Are you okay? Would you vote in favor? Yes, you want to give me a thumbs up? No. All right, she's going to call in.
Okay, my phone ran out of juice, so I switched phones. So can you repeat your question?
My question was, well, actually, I was just giving a little insight, is that we're not getting into details with this resolution. We're just saying these are, we'd like to open up the conversation because there are quite a few things that we should probably make sure for safety reasons are addressed before the opening in the early fall.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to be sure that you answered my question. Thank you, Dan.
All right, so are there any objections to the resolution as written? Seeing none, the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to the Apollonia, if you could give us some background on that. We all heard last week that, last month from the Apollonia, and then why don't you go ahead and summarize, Mary?
Yeah, and you had specifically asked me to write a resolution. So I went ahead with that, and it basically says, I'll just read it. The schooner Apollonia uses sail to bring local products to New York City and seeks a landing place on the west side of Manhattan, where affordable and publicly accessible berths are few. The operators showcase the use of greener transportation and offer related educational programming, as well as providing a public benefit by selling local products transported with minimal environmental impact. The Advisory Council recommends that the Hudson River Park Trust encourage visitation by cultural, sustainability focused and educational marine vessels at its piers by considering flexible use of existing infrastructure, as well as installation of more floating docks for such vessels. And it was intended to be general and not specific to Apollonia, just use that as a jumping off point, because other cultural vessels have had difficulty finding places to land. And if we can be flexible about how we use the piers and floating docks, there will be more places they can come.
All right, I would like to open it up to questions. If anyone has a question for Mary. Comments? Any comments at all? Does anyone have an objection to the resolution as it's written? Does the trust want to comment on the resolution? Robert? No?
I don't, we have, we're proud of our historic boats. We have a number across the park, up and down. And we are, happy to, we always are trying to work with folks to make sure that our slots are filled. So other than that, I will say, I think my understanding though, is that as Apollonia, it's sail freight. So it's actually a commercial operator and would have to involve freight use on I think I don't know exactly where they're asking for through the park, which I think would certainly raise any number of concerns separately beyond the historic and cultural aspects of it.
Yeah, I'll just say that small sailing vessels need floating docks because the piers are too high for them to tie up at. That's part of what the language is trying to address. And that we think about perhaps there's some floating docks like the one on the south side, Pier 26, that are intended for other things that might have time and space available for boats to land at, and to be flexible about that if possible.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, along the same lines. I mean, I think the idea here for this resolution is laudable for sure, but my recollection of the Apollonia was, aside along with being commercial transportation, was that it was a for-profit organization, and that also is a little bit different from what I think, Mary, you're calling for here. I may be wrong about that, but that's my recollection from a presentation they made at the community board. So it wouldn't be necessarily a good intro to what I think you're talking to here.
Well, I think that there are already historic vessels in the park that have commercial purposes, like the Sherman's Wicker, which is, you may not even know the name of the boat, is the boat that Grand Banks is on at Pier 25. And that originally was one of 3 historic vessel berths that has been, since the last RFP or 2, has been specifically for a commercial restaurant type operator. And you know, so it's not without precedent. And we weren't trying to be specific about that, just to be flexible, more because of certain types of vessels need different types of berthing. And although it is a commercial operator, it's like a small business, like the small businesses you have on land, they don't have as much wherewithal to pay for dockage, just like, you know, lower income small businesses can't afford big expensive places to open on land.
All right, thank you. Tammy?
I think, just to clarify, organizations like the Apollonia have both a nonprofit and profit arm, depending on what the boat is doing and usage and stuff like that. So they have both. I don't know which flag they fly under when they do commercial, but I do remember from their presentation, much like Richard said, there's a for-profit arm and a not-for-profit arm. They have both in the same canopy. So, but finding room and space to be able to utilize and support historic vessels, no matter what the designation is, I think, you know, for them doing last mile delivery is super important to support that, because it is the most environmentally friendly way that we have currently existing. So.
Yes, and we were just at the.
You know what, I'm Mary, unless there's a question to you, we just should keep the conversation going.
Yep.
Thank you. If you're asked a question, I'll be sure to allow you to answer it. Tom?
The park is a maritime park, and part of its mission is to preserve maritime commerce on the west side, which is the tradition of the west side. This is not really asking for a dock specific to Apollonia. It's specific to vessels with lower freeboard, such as, like Clearwater. They can't dock at larger docks that were designed for ocean-going vessels. They're river vessels. So it would provide flexibility in the park to be able to host not only Apollonia, which has a dual purpose. I agree wholeheartedly with Tammy. It is a business, but it's the kind of business we would all like everybody to do, good business. But it's a call to develop the ability to accommodate more traditional sailing vessels like you would find in the Hudson River Valley, which could add diversity to the park. So it's more generic than Apollonia, but we're just using that as an example. That was my impression.
Thank you, Tom. Rob?
Yeah, and kind of maybe this is building a little bit on what Tom just said. You know, I'm a little uncomfortable making this so much about Apollonia, because I think to Tom's point, I think that last sentence is really what's, and I don't want to speak for you, Mary, but seems to me like that's your intent. And so if, a kind of a friendly amendment to this would be just to make that the first sentence and then just have it say, for example, the schooner Apollonia, because I do feel, if they're unloading, casks of Hudson Valley bourbon and rolling them down off with bicycle messengers down a dock, there's going to be other issues for Robert and everyone else to think about. So, again, I would just flip the order and make Apollonia an example as opposed to make it the first sentence.
Do you accept the friendly amendment, Mary? Maybe Rob can
Sure.
post it? So Rob, why don't you take a moment and then draft it the way you think it's right, and then we'll revisit it. I still don't see Patrick yet from the DEC. His meeting must be running late. So we'll come back to that after we get the friendly amendment. And we're going to move on to the boathouse RFP. And we're going to basically open it up to, just questions. And I want to lead off, let Robert Atterbury just talk about and give us a summary of the decisions that were made. And then I think we have some members of the advisory council that have some questions as well. So Robert, if you want to just talk a little bit about the RFP process for the boathouse and where you guys came out.
Definitely. So we are super excited about this. Our boathouse program in particular, I think, is one of the wildly successful water access programs in the New York City region. I think, frankly, the entire Hudson. Last year, we put, I think it was 68,000 people on the water in non-motorized boats here in Hudson River Park, which is just, I guess, truly spectacular number. And we are really excited for this next round. So as part of the boathouse RFP, which folks have talked about, we have awarded, we've done conditional award letters or selection letters. We have not yet finalized permits with everyone, so we are still working through individual sort of terms and conditions with each of our boathouse operators. They are unique sites, so we have to work directly with each of them on their programming and for the final pieces. That is expected. We're hoping to wrap that up, I think, by the end of the month now, so that folks can be ready for the start of the May 1 season. So I'm not going to be able to get into all of those details because those conversations with the operators are ongoing, and still we're still doing it. So and we're going to keep it at sort of general level, which is for our conditional selection. We are thrilled that the downtown boathouse has been selected for Pier 26. We are then jumping up down to the boathouse at Village Community Boathouse at Pier 40 is not one of our purpose-built boathouses, so it was not included in this. Sorry, tongue-tied for a moment. So that was not included in this. They continue on their legacy permit as part of where they are. Jumping up to Pier 66. I'm doing this by memory, guys. We have Hudson River Community Sailing will be returning along with Manhattan Kayak Polo, where they share the space as well. They currently also share that with New York Outrigger, which is going to be one of the changes I will talk about. So it will be Hudson River Community Sailing at Pier 66 with New York Kayak Polo. Moving up to Pier 84 will be Manhattan Kayak, which is frankly really one of those organizations and small businesses that has grown up with the park. I'm told Eric, who's the founder, started giving kayak lessons back when it was the Destructor plant off of the south side of Gansevoort. Really quite spectacular to have a real business now doing great tours. And then moving up to 96, we will have Manhattan Community Boathouse and New York Outrigger, and we'll be sharing that space. That is one of our, I believe, the largest boathouse, and so they're going to be sharing it jointly. And exactly the details on that are still they're still having conversations between the two organizations. And so with that, I'm happy to any questions. We're super excited to have so many organizations that many of you are familiar with continue on here in the park.
So I'm sure we have a few questions. I guess I can throw one out in that, and it's probably going to be phrased poorly, Robert, but I guess some of the concerns that I heard was how nonprofits that don't charge for free boating may need to be paying for some expenses they haven't paid for in the past. Is there a plan to help the nonprofits succeed and operate?
So our boathouses are heavily subsidized by the trust. We spend frankly a significant amount of money on our boathouse program. That's the creation of the boathouses, the ongoing maintenance of the boathouses. There is Rob's team. There is the general care and maintenance that we also participate in, as well as a significant subsidy in terms of rent, particularly for the nonprofit programs, some of which pay as low as $1, and a significant subsidy in terms of utilities for it. And it is overall something that we invest pretty heavily in. And I think it's in part why our programs have been so successful. And we're really excited for it. So the answer is yes, we do. And we are also interested in trying to expand conversations with some of our nonprofit operators about how we can the trust can either help folks fundraise, or we can bring in other grants and other things to help offset those costs. The trust we do need the more money in, the more we're able to do, and the better care and the better we are able to care and maintain the park overall.
Thank you. Any other questions? Please raise your hand. Well, thank you for the briefing. Seeing no questions, and just going to see if there's anyone for the DEC one more time who's here that might be able to answer some of the questions we prepared. I don't think anyone's here yet, so hopefully. Patrick.
Let me see if I can't try to.
Do we have Rob's amended resolution?
Oh, let's see.
No, you don't. I'm like, does anyone know how you copy text from the chat? Because I'm like,
oh,
I'm
right.
furiously typing in like.
Let me forward.
A typist, you're not.
Let me forward the email that I got from Mary.
That'd be great. Rob at hudsonriver.org. Thank you.
Yep, I got you.
And I'll stop correcting my typos.
There you go. I just emailed it to you. So we'll come back to that. And while we wait for the DEC, we're going to go ahead and move on to the trust report, which I did not get to read. I'm sorry, Robert. Usually I do make sure that I read it, but I did not have time to read it. So this will be all news to me. Did you open with a joke?
I want to try to buy pack her time here. I'm normally trying to do my best to condense and shorten and go quick. And speak like lightning, I'm told. So I'll try to elongate this as much as I can. So we have a significant number of construction updates. I'm not going to go through them all because they are. I'm told Patrick can give you 5 minutes. Should be able to join. Tried to ping him here. So one of the ones I will flag though is that the trust co-hosted the first public engagement meeting on the estuarium this past month. It was a great meeting. We had a number of attendees. I think it was like up to like 89 or something if I saw it in the attendee list. Really great discussion with folks. We brought the team in to hear some of that design feedback and try to some of the goals and interests of the community at the very front end of this. So before they've really done any work at all on it. And we look forward to coming back to folks when the design team has more. They're doing some base research, some engagement right now, but it was an overall really good discussion, and I think gave them a lot of food for thought. I think as previously reported, our tennis courts resurfacing. I don't know if they mentioned this last month. We have a temporary striping on now. The seasonally warm weather, folks are actively using them, and there will need to be time. I think it's likely going to be in April. Again, back to that construction thing when I ask for specific times, and I get very general responses because it's so weather dependent. When we have a stretch of I think it's about 5 days, they'll need to close for the resealing of them. Expecting in sometime in April, they will mount up pretty quickly when we have that weather to finish it out, and then we'll have the final seal coat. But I'm told they're already performing well. Gansevoort is going well, 97 is going well. Play science play area, I believe fabrication about 85% done, and site prep is happening. And the 550 Washington crosswalk, before Dan asks me, they have completed all of the construction. We are told they are waiting for some Con Ed connection. we have no information on when that will be. I will also say, and I know this was mentioned before, and we've shared some information on it before. New York State DOT has started their bikeway resurfacing project. We have shared the construction update, I believe, with some of the community boards and elected officials, as is their practice. They are, it is their projects. We don't know exactly all the details or where they will be. But my understanding is they're likely starting from north to south and working their way down as far as it is. It's 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., several blocks at a time. They will have to close some crosswalks while they're working on them for that time period, but they should be reopened for the day. Our operations team, from our perspective, we are also both trying to figure out, coordinate that, and make sure we are able to continue operations while that's happening, as well as adding some additional dismount bike signs to make sure that cyclists follow the actual detour and don't use the Esplanade as their detour, which is something that we are concerned about. Past couple weeks, we've heard a number of issues and complaints at Chelsea Waterside, and I don't know, Chris McGann, do you want to chime in here? I don't know if you are able to.
Hello, everyone. This came to my attention early January. Alan Oster referred someone to me, and since then, we've gotten numerous complaints. We're encouraging it both through our email line and from the PEP offices that are up there. There's one individual named Ramon Rosario, who is basically confrontational and combative with everyone else that uses the dog park. He harasses them, he intimidates them. PEP has been called on numerous occasions. NYPD has been called on numerous occasions. PEP has asked him to leave the park multiple times. NYPD gave him a criminal court summons, one appearance. Our chief legal counsel spoke to him recently. He has apparently a history in other dog parks. Many of the people know him. We're working to address it. After our legal counsel spoke to him, everything was good for 2 days, and then he acted up again. PEP had a conversation with him. He was good for another 2 days. He doesn't appear that it's going to be an easy fix. It appears that it's going to be our persistence wearing him down. I know everyone that uses the Chelsea Waterside Dog Park is aware of him and very upset by him, and we are aware of it. We've recently posted a PEP officer there between 12 in the afternoon and 8 at night, specifically for that. It started out on the weekends, and that wasn't enough. So it's not sustainable for a long-term solution, but going forward, we're going to do that until we find out what else we can do. I've been in conversations with the 10th precinct. We're trying to get a collaborative approach on that, but it's not easy. His behavior is annoying and harassing. It interferes with other people's use of the park, but it hasn't risen to criminal nature that it's an arrestable offense. So it's something that I wish I had a better answer. But
I see questions, Tammy and Erica. Do they relate to what we're just talking about now? Or yes, they do. So let's go ahead.
It was slightly before. I actually wanted to ask Robert Atterbury for the bike route. You know, I'm desperately looking for a little bit more information with DOT. Have you been given any kind of schedule? Because we understood it was patchwork as to where it was going to be and when, but that was the last thing we heard.
That is also what we have.
Mm-hmm. I asked Robert that same question, I think, a few days ago. Yep. So
yeah, no, I'm just waiting for any one of us to get the most updated so we can all share it back. I'm desperately, who knows? I mean, I've seen spray paint marks down south, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're starting by me.
Well, I'll be the first to know because it's my route to work every day, although I didn't ride today. So hopefully we'll find out before it actually is detoured. Erica?
Oh, just before we go on the bike piece, there is a email and phone number for their construction liaison. You are, if you want more information or you want to sign up for their email notifications for when they send out their construction notices, you can contact them. I have helpfully included it in the trust report.
Thank you, Robert. And then Erica.
My question was, so Chris, is this a resident? Is this like a dog owner who's angry, or I'm sort of unclear who he is?
Yes, he's a dog owner. He has 2 poodles, and he goes to the park and he plays fetch with his tennis ball with the dogs. But he uses the entire length of the park, and he's been known to throw the ball very close to people. He's actually hit people with the ball. When other dogs go after the ball, he yells at the owners. He yells at the other dogs. He uses foul language. I think, he has some emotional issues, and he seems at times to be better than others. Sometimes he just goes off. He has his own little YouTube page. He puts up his 30-minute videos that are, he thinks he came to say that the other dog patrons were picking on him and harassing him, that as soon as he walks in, he's experienced problems. Again, it's apparently not a new issue for him. It's new since, the park's reopened. I think that just, I called it a maintenance issue. We're going to have to wear him down with persistence. I think when the park is fully opened and there's more people there, that may help matters too. We'll see.
I see that Patrick has just joined us. If Patrick, you're ready, I'd like to switch gears for a moment and then move to the agenda item that addresses some questions to find out more about the DEC, if you're ready.
We want to give Patrick 2 more minutes. I have 2 items.
Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry that I couldn't join you earlier than this. I just rushed back from another public meeting at a NYCHA development. So thank you for inviting me to come. I know that it's been a few months that you've been waiting for me to come and talk to you, and I really appreciate the patience generally, as well as for tonight. And I also super appreciated that you laid out the questions that you had. So I can go through those questions and convey the answers that staff gave to me, if that sounds good to you. And then we can also, have a discussion after that if you have additional questions. Does that sound like a good plan, Dan?
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. I just shared my screen, so folks want to take a look at it. Does everybody see the right screen, I hope, not my non-screen?
I can see it.
Can you see it? Okay, great. So Patrick, you have the floor, and then why don't you go through them, and then we can open it up to Q&A. Do you want to answer a question, then see hands, or do you want to go through all of them and then come back after you've gone through them?
We can go question by question.
Perfect.
So let's start with number 1. So I'm sure everybody knows who I am, but I always, I sometimes fail to introduce myself. Patrick Foster from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I am the regional director for our Region 2 office that is in Long Island City, Queens, and we cover the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. So we work very closely, of course, with Hudson River Park, and I sit on the board of the trust delegated by our commissioner, Basil Sagos. So the park is special to all of us at DEC, and we wear lots of hats regulating all sorts of entities throughout New York City, including New York City. And also do fun things like participate in the development of Hudson River Park into parkland. So question number 1, please describe the process for permit renewal using Pier 98 as an example. So this type of permit is called a Class 03 permit. And whenever that type of a permit, so this is a Speedies permit, so the state water discharge permit. So when a Speedies Class 03 permit is set to expire, the permit holder can submit a renewal application to DEC within 6 months of expiration. And then that has the effect of extending the permit under our State Administrative Procedure Act. So we call it SAPA. Sorry for all the acronyms. SAPA extension if an applicant succeeds in submitting a renewal application. That extension can be indefinite for Speedies permit. Specifically, it would be extended until there was a full technical review that was completed for that individual Speedies permit. So at Pier 98, their permit would have expired in April of 2016, but they submitted, this is Con Ed, submitted a renewal application in October of 2015, which extended the permit indefinitely under SAPA until a full technical review would be complete. So when we receive a permit renewal application, we use a system of scoring for these Speedies permits that's called EBPS. And that system allows us to prioritize which permits to start working on first, because we have thousands of individual Speedies permits all throughout the state of New York. And whenever renewal applications come in, we put them into this system that is created by law and regulation. And it looks at environmental quality, and it also looks at time factors. So the longer you're in that system, the more points you get. So when you achieve the sort of like highest score or high enough score in that system, then the full technical review will be undertaken. And sometimes that could, happen right away because your score could be super high because you're a facility that is really endangering public health and the environment, and we need to work on it right away. In 2016 and 2019, Con Edison submitted what's called permittee initiated modification requests. So those, whenever they submitted those also like bumped up their score in the EBPS. And cumulatively, those requests, in addition to the amount of time that had passed, triggered the full technical review. So after a full technical review, DEC can then publish a draft permit. So the full technical review is undertaken, and then that review goes into the permit writing process. And once that permit writing is completed, and this is like a back and forth process in between technical folks in the Division of Water and then other technical permit writers in our Division of Permits. After that process is done, then we can publish a draft permit. Full technical review is still underway for the Pier 98 renewal, but our DOW folks are, I think, finished with their analysis, and they're just waiting for the permit writers to sign off on the draft permit. The draft permit then would go out for public comment. And there would be another additional step if this permit happened to be in an environmental justice community, which is the case with the permit for Pier 98, which is why Con Ed did a public environmental justice meeting that some of you may have attended. So that's another component of the process that could be added in and was added in for this permit because of its location. So what happens next? This publishing of the permit along with fact sheets for sort of more easily understandable information about the permit would be publicly noticed in our environmental notice bulletin, the ENB. And there will be a review and comment period for that permit. And we rely on the public to give us their comments on draft permits so that we can make a final permit decision after we review those comments. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the comments, the nature of the facility, the volume of the comments, we would prepare a responsiveness summary that would respond to each of those comments that were received. And if we end up issuing the permit, that would be issued along with the permit. So for Pier 98, we're really just, and I was very much hoping that we would publish it before today, but it is imminent, I'm told, that the draft permit that has been worked on for so much time now will be published. So that's the process for permit renewal and what's going on with Pier 98 in that process. Do people want to ask questions about that?
Sure, let's open up the floor for any questions. A lot of information. Thank you so much, Patrick, for giving us the details. Do we have any questions from advisory council members, or should we continue on? No, I don't see any questions, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So number 2, local community boards and the advisory council have expressed a desire to be more engaged during the permit renewal process. Does the public have an opportunity to participate beyond the mandatory one public meeting that was held? So, so under current law, applicants are actually, as I was saying, not required to do community outreach during the renewal process beyond the publishing of a notice of draft permit for public comment. Both in the ENB and, sorry, I didn't mention this before, also in local media. So they have to, Con Ed has to publish the availability of the draft permit in local media. But on February 2nd, yes, as it says in the question, Con Ed did do a public meeting, and that was in compliance of Commissioner's Policy 29 for environmental justice and permitting. So, and that was the reason for that meeting. The permit and fact sheet again will be noticed as soon as it is completed. And the period for comment is 30 days. You can always, if people need more than 30 days, they can request from the department an extension of time. But with renewals, it's generally 30 days is generally enough because lots of things haven't changed. But if there's a lot of interest in something and people ask, we will generally grant extensions. Any questions on that one?
I don't see any questions. No hands are raised. So on to 3.
Number 3, are all outfalls fully permitted within the Hudson River Park? How are they monitored? And when the contents of the outfalls trigger chemical levels dangerous to the public, how is the public informed? So just to confirm, all of Con Edison's outfalls that discharge to the Hudson River from 59th Street Station are permitted. So outfalls means a lot of things. There's also like CSO outfalls, and there's a ton of those all along the park that are, you know, discharging when it rains. But this is the only like Speedy's outfall location within the park. And so it is all of those outfalls that discharge to the Hudson River are permitted. This is the only location. So Con Edison is required to monitor those outfalls based on sample frequency and sample type included for each parameter, and that's in the permit. So the example that our permit folks or water folks wanted to share was like temperature at outfall 001 in the permit is monitored continuously using a recorder, right? So that's the parameter, it's monitored continuously, and you do that using a recorder. And except accordance with its speediest permit, Con Ed must report exceedances of permit effluent limitations monthly in its DMR data. And then so Con Ed gives us the data monthly. And then the department enters the data into EPA's ECHO database, which is then available to the public. And if exceedances are reported, DEC will issue a violation to the facility unless it's anomalous in some way and Con Edison sufficiently justifies that. And I think that part of the reason that there's questions about some of those exceedances, or the other word we use are excursions, are because in the ECHO database, when it gets published, there's not sort of like background information and notes sufficient there to explain what might have happened on a certain day. Do folks have questions about that?
Like, give me an example of what might happen that might affect the result, an example.
So I think it might be later here because there's one that's specifically asked about, but there was like a pH level was over a limit for one day. And so we asked about that. And Con Edison confirmed, he gave us documentation of some concrete work that they were doing, like in the area of that particular like waste stream. And so that pH excursion was attributed to that. And that work was like, totally lawful for them to do. So that would be an example of a situation where we would look at what would be a violation, and then we would see whether it was justified to make sure that it's not some sort of ongoing problem. Or, I mean, even if they were doing that in that case, and there was like some huge exceedance, then it would be, I think we would pursue enforcement at that point. But if it's a small exceedance and it can be attributed to something that's known and that is, not going to happen and endanger aquatic life or water quality, then we would not pursue enforcement for that.
Looks like we have a couple questions. Richard Corbin.
Yeah, really appreciate this presentation. This question talks to levels that could become dangerous to the public. And yet the process you just described, Patrick, was one in which, the reporting is monthly, the review may take some time. Where in this process is there a trigger when there's something that happens that's dangerous that in fact protects the public in a timely manner?
So the facility, and I think that I don't know if Con Edison has come directly to the advisory council, but I know that they've spoken, in multiple forums to talk about what exactly happens at this facility and what the permit allows. And I think that the characterization that there are like dangerous chemicals coming from this facility is frankly not the case. There could be some sort of, because it is a process, there could be something bad that comes from this facility that could come out into the river. That could happen in lots of places, but this place in particular. And that the sort of reporting or monitoring of that would come from an accident. That would be something bad that would happen. So there would be like, you would see a sheen of a spill of some sort, or there would be an odor. I don't know what chemical it would be that would be, additional to what their process discharges that would be dangerous, like acutely dangerous to human health and the environment. But I think that would be outside of the parameters of the permit and what the permit is trying to ensure. And the permit is trying to ensure that the processes that are active, that are engaged in by this facility are over time, not cumulatively going to negatively impact the aquatic habitat and water quality. So whenever bad things happen, we don't, we get reports from individuals who might be impacted at that time. And there's people who work at facilities who would report things to us. So it's a different mechanism and a different thing that we would be trying to achieve. The scope of the permit again is outside of that, those sorts of acute accidents that might happen. I think there's like good housekeeping things and that are also included in the permit. Our permits have those sorts of things to try and ensure that there are no accidents. But if they were bringing in some sort of other chemical into the facility that they would be unpermitted to discharge, and those discharges would happen, that would be, we would enforce against them for doing something that was unpermitted for sure if they did something like that. We also have regular inspections of the facility, and our inspectors would notice something that would be anomalous. I don't have the permit in front of me, but we could also, if you haven't had a technical presentation on the permit and what's in the permit, then we could have somebody from our division of water, talk you through each of those components. I thought if the permit had been issued, it might be a good idea, like the draft permit had been issued, and then there were specific questions about what's in the draft permit in terms of what the permit covers and the different levels, then we're always open and available to have a technical person come by and like walk through those specific pieces of the permit.
Thank you for that in-depth answer. And Tom?
Yes, hi. I agree that chemical pollution is not a primary concern, but it's not an acute concern. It's a kind of more of a chronic concern, considering that the waterway is an estuarine sanctuary designated by you. So it's not necessarily the impacts on the people, it's the impacts on the aquatic life cumulatively of chemicals like selenium. Anyway, the primary concern is temperature. You say exceedance, and exceedance at this facility is rated at 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally in the Hudson River estuary, it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know why this facility needs that kind of different level, but one might think that, and the other thing is that apparently from the presentations, and we've gotten a number and they've been very good, thank you. Not from DEC, but from Con Edison. We could use more participation from DEC, quite frankly, and thank you very much for offering it. The temperature is only exceeded 180 days out of the year, yet the permit would allow it to be done year-round. As the permit is renewed, what some of us have said in public meetings is perhaps something should be looked at in terms of alternatives. For instance, Con Edison uses 1 million gallons of city water a day and disposes of it. Would there be any possibility to look at some sort of recycling system or some sort of storage system rather than disposing of it directly into the Hudson River? Those are the kinds of things that we're curious about because of not only the boaters, but the benthic life. And you're very articulate, and I'm glad there's somebody like you in your position, and I look forward to the opportunity to work with you.
Can you answer, I guess the question, Patrick, is the water, is there any way that you can filter it in a different way rather than bring it back into the Hudson?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the temperature first.
Sure.
Because I had to be educated on this. I was like, what's going on with the temperature here, guys? So the 90-degree limit is for the surface water. Oops. And the 104 is for what actually comes out of the pipe. So that's why it's allowed to be up to 104 degrees when it comes out of the pipe. And then I was like, well, I don't understand why would we not be then like regulating at the surface if we want to make sure that it's not 90 degrees at the surface. So they do all this modeling that says that, you know, a pipe at this depth at this location can have 104-degree water come out of it. And then within the zone is the other thing about thinking about, you know, the surface water being 90 degrees, the zone changes somewhat, and it's not like right next to the pipe itself. It kind of like comes up like a upside down umbrella, right? So, you know, that zone that it creates, like that upside down umbrella, there might not be, you know, there's going to be a temperature, if it was pumping out 104 degrees, which I don't think it does. I think it's their readings are,
they rarely exceed it.
They're rare, yeah, they're like below that usually,
But they're up.
Anyway, let's just say that it was like
above 90.
in between where the pipe is and then the surface, there would be like, you know, 103, 102, 10 whatever, up to 90, let's say, if the modeling is correct, which I assume that it is. But that's something maybe to look at. There could be there could possibly be impacts in that zone, I guess, in that umbrella area, if there are things that, you know, cannot survive or wouldn't survive, like under, you know, at temperatures in between 90 and 100 and whatever.
Well, it's also a very changing environment. You've got the current. You've also got very heavy siltation on the north side of the pier, which has to be dredged occasionally. So sometimes the water's moving and sometimes it's not. So the water, you know, I don't know. It's just an observation, that's all.
Yeah.
The thought that maybe 1 million gallons of the system that's city water stays in the city loop instead of being pumped out into the Hudson River directly. That's all.
Yeah. So you make a good point. So this is city water that's like coming in and it's going through processes and then it gets, you know, treated like with this reverse osmosis system that they've implemented.
And then they flush it out into the
and then it goes
river. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's 1 million gallons a day, and it's like 25 to 30% of the volume that they put out during the winter for sure. During the summer, it's less because they use a lot more water to cool the substation.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of water going through it in the summer. But the permit for the heating should only be during the summer months, when they told us that's the only reason they need to use the river water is in the summer to cool the substation.
Right.
So that's another way to cut down overall potential for heating the river.
Yeah, it functions, I guess, almost like a peaker plant. This particular one, like they use it when they need it.
Yeah, and they only need it in the summer when the exterior temperature gets hot, and they have to cool the cables.
Yeah. So those are the sorts of things to comment on, right? And to bring again, the permit isn't issued, the draft permit isn't issued, but and I have not looked at it. I don't know the details of it. But so I don't know exactly what's in there, but these are the things to dig into and to say, you know, if you think that there are other alternatives for the operation of the plant that are lawful and beneficial, then I think those are things, you know, to point out. And depending on, you know, cost and whatever, I don't know if you've pointed out these things to Con Ed as well, because, you know, they figure out what they want to do in terms of their system, and then they send it to us and they're like, you know, is this legally viable?
Well, I've mentioned it.
We have to determine whether or not it's legal or not.
We've mentioned it to Con Edison, and being a person who's been around a while, I'm not looking for a radical change. It's transition. I know we have to operate a plant, we have to generate steam, but how can we move to something that's more benign for the estuary? That's all, in the long term. And thank you for the opportunity to.
Yeah, Patrick, this
appreciate the questions.
Incredibly educational for me and assuring in many, many ways. Graham, you had a question? You always ask good questions.
You're on the spot now for asking.
Well, I just got a comment first about, as Tom alludes to, there is slack in the harbor twice a day. as was not mentioned by Tom. So, I mean, you're discharging hot water into still water for twice a day for, several hours each day. The Hudson River is a little weird in that it's, there's really two rivers in one. There's the fresh water on top of salt, and they're actually disconnected. It's certainly in this part of the harbor. So it's not as voluminous what you're discharging into as you might think. You're discharging into the surface fresh water, which is really not mixing with the underlying salt water. It's not a big deal. One of the other things that keeps coming up is I'm involved in some sort of conversations about the offshore wind that's coming into the city. And that's high voltage DC has to be stepped down with transformer plants and converted to AC. And those guys are not using any sort of water cooling systems. It's 21st century technology that is air cooled, highly efficient. Even though they're on the harbor, they're on the waterfront. From what I understand, they're not using water cooled systems. And it's kind of like, it's kind of it's 50 years behind here with the water cooling that they're doing. And that would be just I recommend you look at all the new high voltage DC stuff coming into the waterfront. Some in Staten Island, some in Brooklyn, some coming down from Quebec, actually into Hudson River Park, I think, right? And I don't think they're using water cooled systems to get down to the grid voltage.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have my finger on the pulse of those technologies. Again, like we take the application that's in front of us and figure out whether or not the facility can lawfully operate the way that it's set out. But there could be things about the way that they're operating that are not prime, and ways for us to work within the regulatory process to encourage Con Edison to make those sort of incremental changes that we're.
So I guess where I'm coming from, it's not just the Pier 98 issue I see here. There's going to be a lot of high voltage DC coming into the harbor in the future. And we want it all to be air cooled and as efficient as possible.
There are definitely processes underway right now, regulatory processes similar to the one that we're talking about specific to Pier 98 that are going to include even more, I would say, public engagement than this facility because of the ginormous nature of these projects, to bring enough electricity into New York City to wean us off of fossil fuels. So I think that that's great that you're thinking about these processes, and that, when that public engagement is underway, I hope those conversations happen. And it's good to hear about them from you as well, because internally, we have these conversations on a regular basis with, prospective developers of these different systems that are coming into the harbor.
So I just one last comment, and let you go, is any waste heat coming out of their transformer plant is literally waste heat. And in the ideal world, all electricity that is delivered to your house.
Yeah.
If Con Ed is creating significant waste heat in their transformer plants versus maybe industry standards for modern construction, that's something that the DEC or someone should be on about, because that just means you need more renewable, you need more of anything to deliver the same energy to your house.
Right. So efficiency, right, in their system.
Yeah, from end to end efficiency. It's a little scary to see the volume of waste heat they seem to be putting into the Hudson. Right. Just anyway, enough. Thank you.
Yeah, I promised Patrick we'd stick to half an hour, and I know he's had a lot of meetings. One of the
this is a fun one.
Yeah, one of the recommendations I received, and you actually offered to maybe come back with a technical review, is if it's possible, maybe taking a look at the questions and providing us with a written response for the future, if that works for you.
Yeah.
And then if further questions remain, we can always ask you to return. I mean, you've been an amazing guest. Really
Yeah,
appreciate your
really.
time here. So if that's possible, you have the questions, and then this way you can end your long day and we can continue with our business at hand. But many thanks for coming to join us and answering the questions because it's something that we have sought after for many months, and I appreciate the trusts as well as Tracy Jackson, her participation in this. So thank you for being here, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Or
That's excellent. And I'll get you the rest of the answers soon. I think they're like ready to go. So we'll get you those this week.
All right, and then you mentioned that we might actually have the permit to review as well. That's going to be issued.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that is my hope. I was really hoping that it would happen before I came here, so I could. Happy news, but sorry, I don't have that tonight, but soon.
And I must say, Patrick, you did a much better job than what Con Ed did when they came here. Honestly, because they were very defensive, and I think it made us just very worried. And I just think that for me, clarity was provided. So thank you.
Good. All right. Happy I could help, and looking forward to engaging with you guys on other stuff in the future.
All right.
Have a good night.
Good night.
So back to the trust report. I think we left off with Chris, and then Robert, you were going to say there were 2 more items.
Yeah, well, in the delay, my number of items have expanded, as one does when you give me more time to review a written report and what I was missing. So a couple of items, folks know, as you expected, Pier 57, we're super excited about, is opening at the beginning of April. The ground floor, that's the banner headline everyone's going to hear about is a marketplace, which is doing big push for itself, but it also has a huge number of really great public pieces that go into it. That's our living room, which we like to consider now going to be our new Hudson River Park's own sort of winter garden. Has a spectacular view, will be air conditioned in the summer, heated in the winter. It's going to be a great indoor public space to enjoy, where folks can enjoy views of the river for free. We also have the community classrooms that are going to be bookable community classrooms for community events and meetings. I imagine CB2 will have a meeting there at least once before folks realize that they don't want to trek out all the way to the river every time. And as well as Hudson River Park's own Discovery Tank. This is our educational classroom, as well as educational gallery, where we do it, where I hope to make all of you troop out to do for our next advisory council meetings. I think maybe I have agreed with Daniel.
This is Pier 57, which unfortunately is just above the CB2 line, so we won't be able to use it. But
sure.
But yes, hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll figure out a date. And we'll make sure everybody knows that this will be a special in-person occasion.
And I will flag on that, and it's in the written report. We are starting to accept field trip requests for 57. It is our spring field trip season is upcoming, and so we'll include 57 as well as some of our other sites where we do it. Applications are the bookable system is up. The link is, all the information is in there if you want to share it in the report. If you want to share it with folks, it's our education team does a really great pieces on it. Another one along with this as sort of the start of the season here, there are two pieces. One, our green teams, which is our volunteer programming with our horticulture teams. Those are starting to be up and running. I've also included information on how folks can get involved in the advisory or in the report. You should take a look. They're really great. It's really great to be able to help get your hands in the dirt here on the west side, as well as our seasonal jobs in a couple different places, both for our public programs. We have our brand ambassadors who help with our events, as well as seasonal educators and education team as well. So I included the links for those if folks want to share it around to folks that might be interested. Those two are also really great ways to be able to participate, particularly for young people who are able to help. And my final update, we'll say, there is going to be work on as part of the final pieces of construction on the roof of the south shed of Pier 40 is upcoming. They are going to start work. It's going to be, I think, an expansion joint that is between the two rooftop fields. It should only affect daytime users or daytime permittees for the next couple weeks, is my understanding, which we are able to accommodate elsewhere, particularly I think because Chelsea Waterside should be ready for play imminently. I think we're waiting for some final checks on the fence panels and other small items. But in some point later this month in early April, and for yet again another time in which I can only give you some general information because it is weather dependent and the construction team will not let me lock in very specific dates, where there will be a disruption to sort of all users on both of the fields for almost 2 weeks. And that's as they do the sealant so it can have time to cure, in which I'm told it off gases quite horrifically and you will not want to play on the field next to it. We will be able to accommodate I think nearly everyone, particularly on Chelsea Waterside, as well as trying to shift some people around on some of our other fields. But if just as folks as a heads up, there's going to be some disruptions and some path disruptions here at Pier 40.
Robert, have the permit holders like Greenwich Village Little League and downtown?
We are in direct communication with all of them, and we're working with folks on how to on where we can accommodate them for it. Particularly with Chelsea Waterside, some folks will want to move up and then stay and not return to their times here at Pier 40. We were not the fields. The Chelsea Waterside field was not ready for spring, so it's actually unbooked at the moment because we did not put a permittees on it. So it's actually functioning as a swing space until this is open, with the expectation that we'll be able to fully book it again come the summer season.
And speaking about permits and Gansevoort being online in the early fall, is that going to be something that permit holders that people can, that different organizations can apply for?
Yes, so we do have our permitting system. We do expect to be able to permit Gansevoort in particular, given its sort of the nature of it. We may function slightly different in some of our other fields. We may allow folks to do some more, say, prominent games there rather than just solely the sort of weekly in and out times. But yes, we are expecting to permit it. I may, depending on when it is comes online, we may miss some of the fall season and we'll pick up in the winter and spring seasons following, depending on where it is. I don't like to promise field time if we were not going to be able to deliver on it.
Thanks. Is that it? Or did you have one more thing?
That's it. Those are my items.
I want to go back to Robert Pirani's amendment, which if you look at the chat at 7:43, I'd like to take another vote on that. If there's any objections, please raise your hand, or if there are any questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'd like to see if there's a motion to adopt the resolution as it's written. Anyone? There I see Isaac Daniel. Do I have a second? Yes. Okay, great. Hector seconds it. And the resolution passes unanimously. Now, I know there was a question that Lynn Pax wanted to address everybody about the dog owner. So I'm going to consider that to be new business. But we're talking about a previous agenda item. So Lynn, would you like to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, I don't know if you've noticed, there are dogs all over now. Since the pandemic, I think that it's probably doubled. And we don't have any off-leash space downtown. So if you have a large dog and you want to play Frisbee, uptown, it's no problem. You just go to an off-leash space in the off-leash hours. There's nowhere to do that downtown at all. And so I've studied runs, what makes them work. And when they're too small and everyone's in each other's face and there's a shortage of space, it makes them annoyed. And if there's a personality problem, it will come out. And so there needs to be a review of dog owner space and where we can improve it.
You know, Lynn, that's a good new business question. And I think that it definitely is something that we can talk about at a future meeting. So why don't we talk off, I got Robert, who is,
I'm just happy to chime in on this one. So we are, Hudson Park, we have 4 great dog runs, 2 of which right now have both large and small dog runs. We are also in the process of building a 5th dog run that will be especially long at Gansevoort. It's designed to be long and skinny, so dogs can really get that run back and forth. It's actually part of the design, as folks will remember from the community design process. I know in the chat, folks mentioned about off-leash hours. Unfortunately for us, and Hudson River Park is quite skinny, and we are immediately next to a very fast-moving highway, complicated bikeway, and most of the park is in part made up of the esplanade pieces of it, which are again, frankly, traveling paths north-south. So we have definitely looked at off-leash hours, but we don't believe we can safely accommodate it for dogs in the way that, say, Central Park, where you can be, half a mile from the nearest road, can be. And it's just not something that we are able to do, given our locale and the makeup.
I would never suggest off leash in the Hudson River Park. I would never say, because I love dogs and it would be too dangerous. But I've been studying dog runs for 30 years, and I could have a long discussion with you on the state of the dog runs in the Hudson River Park.
let's talk about it for the future conversations. And as a dog owner, the dog right over here, I think it's meaningful for everyone, but let's move on. Is there any other new business? Yes, okay.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
I'm Zazel Loven from Chelsea Waterside Park.
Yeah.
I am concerned, speaking with Kevin, that the park with the comfort station will open in the spring. And I know you all have probably had the opportunity to deal with the comfort station is right near the playground, so it will be used by caregivers and mothers and fathers and children. And how do we handle the homeless population?
I don't know if we still have Rob Rodriguez with us. So I will just to chime in on this. So it's something we already have in a couple of places in the park. The Pier 26 bathroom, which serves the Pier 25 playground pretty extensively, and will also soon serve the science play area, as well as the Pier 51 playground, which is also a playground, a Pier 51 bathroom and comfort station, which is also immediately adjacent to a playground, are just the 2 that come off the top of my head. I will say the Pier 84 one is also heavily used with the fountain there, and the sort of sculptural former splash area piece of it is also heavily used by caregivers and children. So I expect we'll handled like frankly all of those, which include a combination of our really excellent operations team for care and maintenance, cleanings, replacements of toilet papers and others, as well as enforcement by PEP for some of the other issues. We don't see we certainly do see some significant homeless impacts on our bathrooms at times, but overall, I do not believe we've had much of a safety issue with it. It's usually some property damage. I see Rob has turned his camera back on, so I'm going to pass it over to him. Rob, if you have anything to add.
Sorry, I kind of missed part of that question. It's about
There's a new bathroom going online at the Chelsea Water Park.
Right. Well, I know it's a public park and it's a public restroom, and I've had numerous encounters with homeless people in Chelsea Waterside Park. I just don't want it to become a place to wash clothes and take a bath. And
understood. I mean, it's one of those things as it opens to the public. We'll be monitoring closely. We've talked about, general security issues around Chelsea Waterside Park and how we might be able to pay better attention with it with our PEP staff. So it's something we're certainly cognizant of, and I think once it's open, we're able to monitor and see how we can address issues as they come up there. So, but I do think to the extent that the community can help us with calling in any issues as they see it, that would also be very helpful so that we can respond to it.
Thank you. And also, there was a report on NPR today about motorized bike traffic in the Hudson River Park bikeway, and bikers expressing fear that there's going to be a terrible accident because there is no enforcement of.
Yeah, Zaz, I'm gonna cut you off there because it is it's a common conversation we have.
Oh, okay,
And
I'm sorry.
there are discussions about creating a dedicated lane on West Street for motorized, fast-moving electric bikes that are, delivering important items up and down. But right now, there's no other avenue. So it's something that is not as simple as enforcement, I think, but it's something that we're constantly discussing. And hopefully the Manhattan Borough President's office and his plan will create this additional lane. But we all agree with you that it's something that we've been talking about here for many, many years.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing that we're about 8 minutes past our time limit, I am going to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I do. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for the trust for making this a successful meeting and getting the DEC here. I thought it was very important and looking forward to further conversations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye, Tammy.
Darling, could you do me a favor?
Hang on.